I began meditating when I was 16 years old. I'm 30 now, by the way. But back then I was super depressed, very anxious, and honestly, I was at the point of giving up completely. And with all that chaos in my life, I think that some part of me just wanted relief from that. Some part of me just wasn't willing to give up. And so I had to find a way out. There was no other way but through. And with that assessment, with that recognition, I came to discover meditation through a Buddhist monk. And I since learned that most of the meditation techniques that you come across at first especially are not really meditations. There are concentration exercises. And sure, in a modern digital age, we need more concentration. Our attention spans are completely messed up. And so, of course, concentration is good, but it is not meditation. You can fixate on an object, your breath, your bodily sensations, the in and out sensation in the nostrils, a flame, a mirror, whatever you will. That is only the preparation for meditation, if even that. It is the fixating on a particular object, rather than having your attention fixated or scattered on multiple or thousands of objects, which is the usual beta brainwave states. So then you narrow it down to just one object, and that surely stills the mind. But the point of meditation is not to still the mind. That is perhaps one of the biggest misunderstandings. Meditation for me quickly evolved into a search for truth. Not a particular truth, not a conventional truth, not a truth that would be purely subjective. I wanted to know absolute truth. I had always been an avid seeker of truth in one form or another, but I suppose I was at the point existentially where I needed to know. I needed to know what this all was. What was up with this life? What was at the core of this life? And so I used meditation, particularly in the Vedantic spirit, as sort of like this piercing through the layers of illusion. That was my approach for many years, to really just slice away all that was unnecessary. And that was perhaps the practice for the first 10 years. And it served me well. It had a lot of pitfalls, and I stepped into every single one of them, I'm sure. But I was striving super hard, very diligently. I was meditating militantly, really. And it drove me psychotic, it drove me crazy. I fried my nervous system, and it took me many years to recover from that. And I came to a point where I gave up meditating for a long while because it was so strenuous, and it tired me. It wasn't serving anymore. It was more like a whipping me across the back, right? Yeah, it was a tough discipline. And it had gravitated towards something that was no longer meditation. And it took me a few years to come to a new realization. A meditation is not an action of doing. It is not something that you undertake with the mind. It is not a practice. In fact, what meditation truly is what you are. To recognize that you are aware, and that awareness which you are is self-aware. Because with that comes the release of being so deeply invested in this identity structure that pretty much every single human alive has adopted this conditioning that we all know, the belief that I am so and so. And with our stories and narratives and belief structures comes a lot of suffering, a lot of baggage, a lot of unnecessary stuff which we simply adopted from our environment. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, once we realize we are not that, we can have compassion for this human experience. We can have compassion and love for the fact that we are able to have this experience even. And that gave me a sense of pervasive freedom and peace. To know that even in the midst of the most difficult times in my life, there was that part, the innermost part really, that which I really am, which was somehow unaffected by all the ripples on the surface. And what a wonderful thing to realize. And that was not something I conjured up. It was not something I created or fabricated. It was simply discovered. It reminds me of the story of the treasure under the floorboards. Imagine having lived in a house your entire life, only to discover many years later that a great treasure was hidden underneath the floorboards. That was really the same type of recognition, to realize or to come to discover that you had this treasure buried within. And that it is so glaringly obvious that in fact we overlook it all the time. To say that you are aware of being aware, and that by that very fact you must be that awareness itself, it sounds simple, because it is simple. And I've come to find that, in my understanding, is the very core and foundation of meditation itself. It is that awareness which you are. Because looking at spiritual teachings, religious scriptures, and all of that across the entire world, it is all pointing to that. You. It is pointing to you. That you are the key to this entire universe. You are that in which everything arises, everything disappears, and comes about for you. That is the great mystery, the paradox of life, how this is possible. Because you can have the perspective that you are a particular character with circumstances and conditions pertaining to this character. And that you're just moving about in this life, in this place called Earth, on this weird planet here. And there is a lived experience to that. That is an undeniable part of being a human, sure. But there is another aspect to our experience, which is that we are simultaneously captivated in the play of being a human, but also we are the spectators of being a human. We are simultaneously that which is involved and that which is completely uninvolved with the action. And you can liken this to a screen of sorts where you are the screen itself. And the screen that you are is unaffected by the movie that plays on the screen. That is life for you. And to be able to be fully human, not having to push anything away, not having to sit with closed eyes and to close off the world, but to be fully enveloped in this life with all that it entails, all the ups, all the lows, and to know that you are simultaneously free of it, that nothing in this world says anything about you, because the you that you are is untainted, cannot be colored by. It is completely transparent, spacious, and yet luminous, because it is that which brings light to all experience. It is that which existence itself borrows its existence from. And it is right here. That is the marvel. That is the great perplexity. That the greatest human secret, which isn't really so secret, is right here in plain sight. And I suppose there is just an undeniable presence to that, which you, regardless of having meditated years or any time period at all, it is completely and utterly available to you, because it is you. It is not the you that you will come to be. It is not once you go from A to B. It is what you are now, prior to all your beliefs about who you think you are. Strip away all thoughts about who you think you are, about your beliefs, about the world, about what anything is really. Just being as you are already, without logging into this identity structure, without entertaining anything, but just for a few moments, notice what is here. That part of you which is not created. That's in your very experience, which you are not having to do in order to be. Because you know that you are. You must know that you are, because if you claim that you are not, you must be there to say that you are not. So to know that you are is it is the primal knowing. It is the utmost, the first, the primary knowing that all beings know. And that is meditation. It is so simple. And since meditation is what we are, you don't need to undertake any practice. You simply need to start paying more attention to what is right here. Instead of always going with the mind's tendency to something other than here and now, just start to pay more attention. That is all. You can do that while walking, washing the dishes, petting your animals, whatever it may be. There is nothing that stands in the way, for at every single moment of your life is the pristine knowing, always accessible, that you are. That is the underlying knowing. It is what you always know. Because in order for anything to be known aside from that, you need to be there first to know it. So that is really the takeaway from my 14 years of meditating. Take care. Bye.